Hi guys. So this video, I don't want you to think because of the title that this is meant to be some sort of checklists that you're meant to like tick off in order to define yourself as a good person. If anything, this is more like a think piece. And I feel like I'm going to be left with more questions. And if you're watching this, you likely will be left with more questions. But I'm hoping these are quality questions, and the questions that make you get to know yourself better and think a little bit about how you choose to define things, how you choose to define yourself and other people. This question of, am I a good person? Are they a good person? I feel like it's something that I don't even know when I really began asking myself that, or even like thinking about that. Likely, most likely, around the time that my ego was fully formed and I'd formed some sort of personality. And from that personality came an importance to feeling a sense of goodness. And I think it's a bad thing to want to be a good person. I don't want to villainize self inquiry, but I think the attitude that we should come towards it can be really problematic. I feel like when we ask ourselves this question, we aren't asking to see ourselves, but asking from a place of judgment. We've already defined what we think is a good person through things that either society has selected for us. And let's be real, a lot of things that which general society would define as good is deeply rooted in colonialism, deeply rooted in patriarchal systems. And a lot of time, because of intersectionality, capitalism plays a role in it too. So to really question where we get our values from is important. My values need to be my own. It's something that I'm learning now. No one can tell me what feels right for me. No one can tell me what feels wrong. Only my heart and soul can really define that for me. And even through that, you need a sense of clarity to be able to translate that for yourself. You know? Isn't as simple as saying, oh, I think that's wrong. I think that's right. Like, for example, stealing is wrong. From a capitalist society, stealing is a big deal. Money is our power, essentially. And when that is threatened, we go to jail. Whether or not that's for stealing baby formula or stealing food for other people. And most people would generally agree, despite the fact that this is criminalized. You wouldn't judge someone for stealing food. You wouldn't judge someone for stealing baby formula. You wouldn't judge someone for stealing things that they essentially needed. But then if you were to change the item and it was a Gucci purse, would you then think that that is a bad act? And it's less about the question, more about what goes behind the question. One of my biggest recognitions was that the ego is obsessed with definitions. The ego loves to define things, put things in a box, have things very clear cut and exactly as they see it. It doesn't want changes to that system, doesn't want to see the little nuances, and most definitely does not want you to go outside that box, even a little bit. And in trying to define things, I think we often lose ourselves. We often lose our sense of empathy, our sense to just like allow other people and ourselves to be. We live in a world that's dual, and as much as we want to pretend that we are all light and love, we are not. That's a fucking lie. And I'm telling you, if you're new to this stuff, you're entering an interest in spirituality, anyone who's saying that they're all, even just with people in general, you make friends with somebody, you're getting to know a new person, if they're only keen on showing the positive side of their personality, and they try to project the fact that they're entirely positive, entirely good, completely perfect, then they're lying to you. And most likely they're lying to themselves too. Because one of the core parts of being a person, or even existing in this fucking universe, is the idea that we exist with the duality. No part of us is completely light and love. And the parts of us that are completely light and love cast a shadow. And trying to ignore the part of ourselves that aren't light and love, we suffer. We suffer a lot. Because we end up fighting against ourselves. You can't deny it. The fact that there's urges to lie, to cheat, to steal, to be cruel thoughts, whether or not they're intentional or conscious or not. Jealousy, anger, resentment, even hatred. All these things exist in our world. All these things can exist within us. And the inability to come to terms with them, the inability to accept them, is what causes a war inside us. It causes two aspects of our personality to be in conflict because we're trying to just be one thing and we're two things. And this thing exists. It doesn't want to be denied. It doesn't want to be ignored or neglected. And it will continue to exist even as you do that. So here you are trying to be one thing while this other thing exists. And now you're in conflict. Now you're fighting with yourself, fighting with your thoughts, fighting with your personality, and trying to be something when you should just focus on just being what you are and seeing what you can form from that. I think that's a true path. So I asked you, are you a good person? But I raised you, are you a clear person? Do you see yourself in love and empathy? Do you allow yourself to explore the things that are uncomfortable? Which is so important. We can't just have thoughts or emotions and just completely ignore them, pretend they don't exist, shove them to the side. These things have roots, and oftentimes these things are deeply rooted in the things that we need to explore in order to achieve our own freedom from our suffering. And but through our own pain, we end up choosing to ignore the thing that could offer us salvation because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. A lot of things in this world don't feel good, but a lot of things in this world feel amazing. That's life. I've been reading The Untethered Soul, and I'm almost done the book, but it's my second time reading it. But I just finished a chapter on death, and the book talks about the idea that life would not exist in its fullness without death. That death is what drives us to make a life that is worth living. We recognize we don't have unlimited time. We recognize death could come to claim us at literally any second of any single day that it chooses to. We recognize that we don't have control over this. And we could choose to fight death, to deny this is a reality for us, live in fear and shame over the things that we don't have control over. Or we can embrace death and see this idea of limited time in this body that we exist in, this reality we exist in this moment, as a gift, something we get to learn from, something that we're only here just to experience. And through accepting death, we can also see that since life is limited, and since we're literally only here to live, there's nothing else. We could come in with our soul's purpose, what we want to do with this world, that's up to us. But from a wider perspective, you're human to be a human, to live as a human, to experience life. And like I said, that includes the negative too. I can't run away from suffering, but I can choose how I engage with my suffering. I can choose to love myself through suffering. I can choose to rightfully see myself and give myself the opportunity to learn and grow from the things that I experience. I'm learning that you can avoid hurt, you can avoid pain, but you could choose to not suffer along with it. Things will come and they will bring out your shadow. But the perspective along the spiritual path is to see these as gifts, opportunities to see more of ourselves, integrate more of ourselves, pay witness to the unconscious, bring up unconscious beliefs, attitudes, energy, and be able to use it in your day-to-day life through seeing it fully. And that's the only way to do it, to fully see it. You asked if you're a good person, and I raised you. Are you able to love yourself despite the fact that you may not fit a definition of outside values of what a good person may be? I raised you to create your own value system of what it means to be good and live by that. As if that's your code, your moral code, that's your code of conduct in your life. And to choose people who actively engage you in your values, who call you to your values, and remind you of them through their own actions. One thing I realized when reading All About Love was the importance of who you surround yourselves with. So All About Love by Bell Hooks is what I was reading. And the book is a little older, so there's some stuff that's a little outdated. But the message still remains. It matters who you surround yourself with. Sharing your values with the people, sharing similar values to the people you are around is so huge. Especially if you're someone who's sensitive. I'm learning to detach from things and to engage consciously with people before I allow them to take up my energy, my space, my time. Because that to me is the most valuable currency. There's nothing else that's more valuable than that. My attention. Because really that's the only thing I actually have. Everything else is just outside of me. And in reality, it is really just an illusion. It doesn't really, like, money, my clothes, none of that shit's actually, like, real in terms of currency. But attention is everything. And if you don't really believe that, I task you to be conscious of what you pay attention to in your day-to-day lives and see how that really affects your emotional world. Other times, I feel like we take this idea of being good and use it to judge ourselves and to put ourselves down and use it as an excuse to engage in negative thinking about ourselves and other people. Is goodness and perceived badness rooted in action? Or inaction, even? Because inaction is also an action, let's be real. And action does not lie. Silence does not lie. And how much of each action on this spectrum, on either end of the spectrum, does one have to achieve in order to be defined as good or bad? It's like saying, okay, this person is cruel. How much cruelty do they have to engage in order to be cruel? What is just enough? What is a line? Where do we place that? And sure, we could talk about it. We could talk for ages about it, where we want to place that line. But if you take a step back for a second, take a deep breath, and really look, you realize that shit doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. The semantics don't matter. What's important is that you're actually looking at people. So, we ask if we are good people, but I raise you, are you aware? Do you look at people to look at people? Or you look at people to judge them through the lens of your ego? Or whether or not they fix your box of what is acceptable in terms of your ego or is unacceptable? And when I talk about ego, in terms of viewing what is unacceptable and acceptable, I think it's really important to look at. I think the best example I can give you is this idea that one thing bothers me and doesn't bother the next person. The action remains the same, the experience remains the same, but our perspectives are solely different because of what it is we both experienced in our life, what we absorbed, what things we've chosen to engage in, and take it on our personality, and what is actually truly important to us. How can we define something that is so difficult to grasp that you can't inherently just hold and touch in your hands? You can't make the rigid lines and shapes that this concept makes. You can only hold it in your mind, and you can only hold its energy of what goodness feels like. And I think, for a conclusion, that's the most important thing. So, I asked you about goodness, but I raised you energy. How does this make you feel? How do you feel engaging with the thing that you're engaging with? And I feel like all the other things that I brought up kind of come back to this thing too. Does this feel clear? And not clear in the sense that your mind can make sense of it. But is this energy muddled? And while we can lie, and we can tell ourselves things, energy doesn't lie. And our ability to feel energy doesn't lie. I know what feels safe to me. And I've learned that through my own work. And blood, sweat, and fucking tears, I will tell you now. I've gone from being suicidal to waking up every day with a smile on my fucking face, thanking God for the fact that I'm fucking alive. I've gone from hating my body to being in love with taking care of my body, to being in love with the fact that it just exists. So we come back to this idea of personhood, where goodness can't just be in our experiences and how we externalize our experiences, but through the way we feel in day-to-day life. If you're depressed, and if you've ever been really badly depressed, it's not the easiest to be kind or understanding or patient. We can still be those things, but you recognize in feeling consumed sometimes by misery, it isn't the easiest to engage in a world with the belief that there is goodness, or through the world with your own inherent goodness. How do you stay in the energy that holds you to goodness and not from the people around you? Because the people outside of us give us a gift of allowing us to be in certain energies. They call things to us through bringing things out of our subconscious, or by existing in the way they do in their energy. They remind you of what you can be. But it's not their task to create a moral sense of comfort within us. Something I've noticed is that when people have different morals, or let's say someone is more strict with their morals, it can cause discomfort for another person who may have overlooked certain things. And this is not necessarily from a place of judgment. It's more the sense that if someone is engaging in clarity and vulnerability and actively engaging in a way that not in our mental lens of goodness, but in their own personal goodness. But these type of people tend to call other people to discomfort and thus calling them to action or suppression. Or oppression is a better word. Because if someone is doing something that you feel you should be doing, or someone is doing something that you wouldn't be doing, you will feel discomfort. Yeah. Because that's a part of you that knows that you could be doing better on both ends. Whether that means you could be engaging with someone who has a lot more kindness in their heart, or wouldn't judge people in a certain way, or wouldn't look at people in a certain way, or wouldn't engage with certain energies. Or knowing that you could be engaging in an energy that another person is engaging in, but you're choosing not to because it doesn't feel as comfortable to you. And sometimes that can be a wake up call for us because there's nothing better than finding yourself to discomfort. Nothing more true than finding yourself to discomfort. Because things that make you uncomfortable will tell you so much about your personality. They'll tell you so much about your ego. They'll tell you so much about your mind and the constructs you created in your mind. I don't want to be a good person. I'm realizing I don't want to get lost in this constant questioning of myself. And not in the sense that I'm not interested in engaging in self-analysis or self-critique or looking at myself on a deeper level. But I don't want to engage in society's view that is often rooted in people pleasing, often rooted in following a criminal code of conduct that oftentimes does not serve us as the people. And let's be real, the people didn't create a lot of these rules. If I saw someone stealing baby formula, if I saw someone stealing food, my mouth is zipped and sealed. They have nothing to say about that. They could have nothing to say about people assassinating dictators and fascists. Nothing to say about people illegally entering countries. So, society's view of goodness is quite antiquated. Where do we get off trying to create all these external set of rules in which we can define an internal experience? We are going to suffer. We are going to grind our teeth and churn and be in horrible discomfort because everything is conflicting and nothing really does actually make sense. And the lines we created that lead us to heaven are old and busted. Let's be real. Think for yourself. What does it mean for you to be a good person? For you. Not other people, not the people around you, but you. Before you get wrapped up in an egoic sense of goodness and it warps you, I urge you instead to let go of your mind and to be focused on your heart. You had a closed heart, a hurt heart, a heart that is engaged in pain and the cycles of pain and suffering. And you really know that it won't serve you. It won't serve you on your defined path of goodness. Because you can be a good person, but if you have a closed heart, what are you actually doing for the world? What are you actually doing for the world? What are you actually doing for your collective? Because we don't live in a vacuum by ourselves. We live engaged with everything around us. How much love can you show the world, yourself? How much love can you radiate? I guarantee you that will do so much more, so much more for you than trying hard to be a good person. But yeah, that's it for y'all. Take care.